What attracted you to Tim Ballard's story?
Well, I have 3 adopted children, and from China, and I knew the dangers that we're having to children globally. And then obviously
the child trafficking in China.
Yeah, just a lot of nefarious stuff going on. And then every time I do a film, I'm always working with agents all the time. So this would continually
come up. You're working with agents about everything. The trafficking of
No, just like I'll be working homicide and trafficking would come up. I'm working with ATF, trafficking would come up. And then you start going into the dark web of looking at other stuff, and then it came across the children, and that's where it went into the things I couldn't even grasp. And then when I started working with Tim Ballard, he brought up the organ harvesting, and of course this is a flashback to all the other stuff. And so Tim was somebody that I also had my friends tell me what kind of guy he was, but they sent me the script. And I was blown away. Alejandro Monteverde and Eduardo Verástegui met with me, and then Tim Ballard wanted me based on 2 films I did. One was The Count of Monte Cristo, and the other was Passion of the Christ, and that's how it all came to be.
What was it about Ballard's story that attracted you to it?
Well, like the part I was saying earlier was that knowing what I went through and adopting our children and seeing the threats against children globally and the dangers with them. So I thought that this had what it could do, like what The Passion did. I mean, bringing people to their faith. And this part of it is taking action. And as I told you earlier, we don't have a country. We don't have a south border. And by definition, you have to have borders, and we don't. And then drawing the light on what is truly going on. It's a $152 billion a year business. That's insane.
$152 billion. Is that the sex part, or is that the sex and the organ harvesting part combined?
So the trafficking part is $32 billion. 32 to 34 billion is buying and selling the children. But if I have a child, let's say, for example, little Joey, he makes me $20,000 a day for 10 hits with 10 different clients. I'm his pimp. He procures that money. That's 20 grand. There's 152 billion. So to give you an idea what that is, that's every major sports team in the world. All the NBA, all the Major League Baseball, all World Cup soccer, NFL, all that combined, and still not 152. You would have to send every 18-year-old this year that graduates high school to Stanford University for 4 years. And that would be 152 billion.
What is driving the demand side of the equation? You talked about it's trafficking for sex, and it's organ harvesting. Is there other elements? Is it also for labor, for slave labor, or is it
adrenochrome? The whole adrenochrome empire. This is a big deal. It is listed under the NIH. It is a chemical compound. It's a molecular structure. Is C9H9NO3. It is it's an elite drug that they've used for many years. It's 10 times more potent than heroin, and it has some mystical qualities as far as making you look younger. There's
that scene in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas that nobody could figure out.
No, I saw that, and I tell you, that had a big laugh. About 9% of the audience laughed, and I'll tell you,
laugh.
Oh, absolutely, they knew what was going on.
An insider knowing
absolutely what it was, and so we returned that on Sound of Freedom.
Okay,
now you got to hear this story.
Okay, hang on. For those in this audience that know the details, but we'll share this because we want to share this with family and friends and take people to the theater. Go back to the stimulant in the blood, adrenochrome, and back it up with. Give me some facts so people don't say we're in conspiracy theory.
So here's the point. I don't believe that there's a Hunter Biden laptop. You know how I know that? Because for 2 years the media said there was no such thing. So there's none. But then there is now. And then for 7 years, we learned that Trump's a Russian spy. For 7 years. Well, he's a Russian spy. But then he's not. Well, that was about 80% of everything we heard from the media for the last 7 years. And suddenly I bring this up and you say, well, this is a conspiracy theory. So we're back to this whole conspiracy theory thing with the media that's putting on, I had my career completely ransacked. I had no idea what I was stepping on. But every doctor that talked about...
But you had your career ransacked before this film. You had your career ransacked.
Yeah, but this was a bridge too far for them.
When you were Count of Monte Cristo, they were saying you're the next big leading man in Hollywood. Then you did Passion of the Christ. That in and of itself took your career off track, correct?
Yes, it did, absolutely. I was taken off the list. The moment I took that film, I was taken off the list. Now, I was able to keep going on because I had some, favors and directors that came up and stepped up and said, "No, I'll hire him."
You also have star quality.
Well,
and just the practical part of the business.
I work my butt off what I do, and I've,
So why would you take this film knowing that you're stepping on a Claymore mine? Because you know what the reaction is going to be in the industry. That's why it's taking you. This film, by the way, go to angel.com/forum. The film, I think, is as close to a masterpiece as far as filmmaking goes. Yeah. Right? Particularly an action film like this that it's also a thriller.
Yes.
But it's taken you 3 years to get distribution. The Angel.com guy stepped up. You must have known when you read the script. You must have known in meeting with Tim Ballard where this was going to lead you.
Yeah, but I saw something that was so beautiful. A film that really affects me a lot is It's a Wonderful Life. Now, that seems like a reach, but I'll tell you this. Jimmy Stewart did 26 missions over Germany, Nazi Germany. He ran it's not the B-50, B-17, but anyway, I'll come back to you in a second on that one. But anyway, you have to absolutely have quiet comms, and he was the leading commander. And when you're flying through flak, a lot of those planes go down and you hear the screams go on. I'm sure that affected him tremendously when he was doing that scene where he says, "God, if you're out there," and that's bar scene. And It's a Wonderful Life. Now, here's a guy that's going to commit suicide.
Well,
he's
at
the end of his rope, and he said, "God, if you're out there, please help me." That greatly affected me. And when I read this, where this guy, Tim Ballard, is out there, "God, please help me." And he goes out there and risks his life for this little girl. Jesus talks about, the kingdom of heaven is like a pearl, right? That you'd sell everything for. And this guy goes out and does it. And I thought of how, like King David, David, before he was a boy, 16, his own father rejected him. And he can't believe that Goliath is talking all these horrible words about him, and he comes off that hill and he tells those commanders what to do, and he goes off because he's going to face his Goliath. And this guy has that David quality. My son's named David. There is something about that just moved me. And there were a lot of actors that turned out, and all they saw was the trafficking and everything. But this thing hits your heart and makes you do incredible things. And we, as a country, my God, our republic, to save it, we have got to pull it together. We got to pull our shit together and save our children. If not our country, our republic, we got to save our children.
How is the United States as the New Jerusalem? How can we be the drivers of demand on this worldwide? And both for the sex part of it with children and the organ harvest.
I'm going to tell you how this is going to happen. You go into a movie like this, just like The Passion of the Christ. You see that movie and your heart's on fire. And all of a sudden, God can take you and to do amazing things. Like he did with me. He came to me and asked me to become an actor, and I said, "Oh yes." But it was impossible, I thought, Now, when you go to a movie like this and you start going, and all of a sudden it sheds this light and it starts spreading across the country, and then we get all these whistleblowers. See, Steve, I want these whistleblowers, the guys that showed me this stuff. And then they'll have the courage because they're terrified. They feel they're going to die, right? So those guys come forward and start blowing the whistle, like Miss Rodas did on April 26th, and drawing a light and saying that 85,000 children died. I guarantee you it's much more than that. The numbers that Tim were giving me were so astronomical. And so this is a clear and present danger, and we've got to get behind these warriors, and we got to get behind our country, and we got to be by the people again.
You want whistleblowers to come forward.
Absolutely.
Because Tim Ballard.
And this film has the power to do that. This film, when you watch it, you just all of a sudden, I'm not afraid anymore. Like The Passion was.
Because of what Tim Ballard did.
Absolutely. On Passion of the Christ, we had two guys come forward and say they committed murders 20 years earlier. They realized, wow, when this thing all runs out, they ain't going to go. They're not.
They came forward
and said, you know what, I got away with committing murders. Okay? this has a power that some agent sitting there watches this and says, I don't care. I know what I've seen. I know what's there. And I'm not afraid of the truth any longer.
Part of the story is where Tim Ballard is at DHS. He's assigned to this. He's a group leader. They tell him, come home, and we're aborting the mission, and he refuses to do that.
That's correct.
We want those whistleblowers inside our government to start coming forward about what really is going on.
It goes back to the line in the film, when God tells you to do something, you don't hesitate.
Because God's children are not for sale.
That's correct.
What, in the making of Passion, knowing you for many years, the making of Passion had so many supernatural efforts to stop it. And it had you and Mel and the rest of the team had a clearly a spiritual journey or catharsis.
Yes.
Did it happen in the making of this movie with you, or is it happening in trying to get this movie? Because people, when you say this movie, you're going to sit there and go, how can this movie be in the can for 2 years or 3 years and not be seen by people? Somebody must be suppressing this.
Well, we showed it in a theater in Vegas of 1,500 people. They were in there, and they were, during one particular part, they kept talking. So I think it was like 5 screenings, but at the end, I got to talk to all of them. And I said, why were you talking in this particular part? And all 5 screenings you did. And they all started yelling out, Epstein Island. So in this movie, there is a sex island, because Epstein Island isn't the only sex island out there.
What do you mean? Okay, talk about the sex island, because this thing is dealing with Colombia. Talk about the sex island.
In this particular film, well, they do a raid, and the lady that ran that operation, she was out. She was out of prison. You see, so you've got a lot of agencies that are involved in this. Why wasn't she in prison? So he was down there talking to their side of their government, saying, do you understand when this film comes out, it's going to shine a light on you. And if you don't put her back in prison, you're going to have problems.
Because Eduardo, when he was on the show the other day, he's saying that between the Mexican government and other governments, that there's not just even a conspiracy, that's where these kids are trafficked up from for the demand to the United States. Do you also think that inside the U.S.
100%. All the 3-letter agencies are all involved. Absolutely. I'm not saying all of the people are all, but the ones that are the most powerful, they're protecting. They're protecting this information from getting out.
You mean CIA, DNI,
all of them, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why would they not be?
Well, let me just say, like, Fast and Furious, and you heard about that. I said, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And then you go, wow, why does the cartel?
This is the gun running operation.
Yeah, but why does MS-13 have the most advanced guns? Why do we at Sinaloa and gangs have all? How come 110,000 people died or disappeared in Mexico City? Where did they go? And they're starting pulling people out of body bags now. This is just insane. With our military, our special forces, and we don't take care of this. Like I said to you earlier, Tim has got, for one traffic guy like Tim Ballard, you've got 5 guys that go after the cartel. They're just completely outnumbered.
On drugs.
Correct. Yes, on the drugs.
And we know now the human trafficking.
I think this is far. I think it's far bigger than that now. Well, I mean, we were talking about 2 million children, and he goes, "Yeah,
you monetize these kids every."
That's correct. And then he started going into 2 million other children. Now, this is other agents that I'm speaking to too, and then the 2 other million are in the organ harvesting, and it's just like 2 million this year, 2 million, and they just use them up, and then they pass them off into organ harvesting programs.
Talk to me about we'll get to that in a second. Talk to me about the demand. If it's so organized on the trafficking of these children, in for either sex or and eventually organ harvesting, you can't just have that demand unless somehow that's organized also.
100%. I believe. Okay, so the agents that I've spoken to. All right, here's it's for a barrel of oil, $77. For a barrel of body parts and what's going to be adrenochrome, all the plumes that are in the mother's wombs, that goes into a plastic barrel. That's $77,000. Now that gets sent into these biolabs.
Barrel oil,
$77. $77,000 for a barrel of body parts of children, blood. All of that goes to these biolabs. And then now go to Victoria Newland's testimony.
The biolabs, you're talking about the biolabs in Ukraine.
Correct.
How can
and wherever else those places are. So yes.
Walk through the supply chain of the supply into the biolabs. What do they take?
As far as I can't give you the molecular structure. No. I can give you
what's the input of the body parts?
Everything, all the waste, all the body waste, all of that. That's what they told me.
Which has the stimulant in it.
Yes, that's one way of getting it. It's probably not the ultimate way, but it's probably a Diet Coke.
Who's organizing that?
I would have to say definitely that it has to be in the three-letter agencies.
So your contention and what you want, you're in.
I'm saying this. You say there's smoke, there's fire. Okay, so if I say to a media person, 2 plus what equals 5, and I say 3, and the media will immediately say, how do you know? Did you see a 3? That's what it's like. If you go to Vegas and you win 1,000 hands in a row in blackjack, do you think there's cheating going on?
At the level of $152 billion a year.
Yes.
Right, this has to be making money for a lot of people, and that cash has to be flowing through. Your contention is it is impossible to have demand at that side and have supply.
That's correct.
And not have some sort of organ.
Yes.
This can't be a random.
No.
But gangs in Mexico.
But the whole thing, just the thing with Miss Rodas, she comes out and makes this testimony, this claim.
Just that get our audience up to speed.
Well, she said that 85,000 children have disappeared. And she's a whistleblower.
85,000 of the kids were coming across.
That's correct. This last year,
and you would think that they would be pretty good.
The next day,
they can track anybody anywhere. Right?
Steve, the next day, the media didn't even pick it up. It's not even worthless. It's worthless to them. That's worthless information. And there's no, hey, my bad, Hunter Biden laptop. Oh, and by the way, there was a lot of suggestions that there was probably something more on that laptop than we want to go into. I mean, when you say laptop from hell,
on the perversion.
Well, I got it from the best of the best, and they said there'll be adrenochrome there. Oh, by the way, on the street for all of those of you that don't know this, but it's called ambrosia.
Ambrosia is the street term.
That's a street term, yeah. Well, the elite term.
And your belief is in the hard drive from hell. When you get to the bottom of that, you'll also find, when you see all the perversion and degradation of Hunter Biden with these women, that you also find that. I'm trying to get you as much trouble as possible.
No,
if the 3-letter agencies are going to come after you, we're going to make it worth their while, right?
Well, I think that they know that. I think they know why those laptops disappeared in the cross testimony. Was that Crowley that did that testimony? When was it? Was it with Christopher?
Christopher Wray.
Was he the one that was being cross-examined? And they asked him maybe it wasn't him, but it was someone high up in the FBI, and they said, "Where are the laptops?" Oh, they've disappeared. I'd like to look at those laptops. I think you got to start looking at them.
Well, we can certainly get your hard drive.
Yeah.
Let's go back on the 3-letter agencies.
Yeah.
Your contention is that they must know that these government agencies or other operators in these other governments are doing on the supply side of getting the kids in here.
You have to understand. Yeah.
Also, hang on. Your also contention is that it is impossible. Rojas tells you 85,000 children are missing under our disappeared.
Yeah.
That we can't find. And since the government's
media
so good about giving the EBIT cards and the phones and tracking everybody else, how could they possibly lose 85,000 children?
Yeah.
Your other contention is that the organization of this, both in the organ harvesting and in just the use of these children for sex objects, is so big that it has to have some sort of organized effort.
That's correct.
And that effort, I take it, in your belief, is more than organized crime or more than the people that are monetizing this. It has to have some element of the government. Is that your contention?
Yes, it's my contention. But my biggest thing here is why they were so against this film coming out. And when I saw this in front of the audience and they're not stupid. I mean, a lot of the public, they're very smart and they're very, and they understand more than me in a lot of ways. They connected the dot very quick. But when you sit down in the room and you actually go through this footage that I have absolutely seen with my own eyes, and I couldn't sleep for 2 years.
What footage was this?
It's pretty bad stuff. Just regular.
But what it was given?
No. I don't want. It's bad stuff. It's stuff that goes into and all of the trafficking and all of the stuff. Then I remember at one point he looked up to me and he said, "Are you sure you want to go any further?" And I said, "I didn't know." And I said, "Yeah." And I couldn't believe what I went into, and then so then I went and met at some point with Tim Ballard, and he started telling me about organ harvesting, and I just said, we got to do something. So in the film, the immediate first thing I did was there's a scene in there between me and the pedophile Ernst Lipachinski, and what happens is that in the scene. This actual line is not in the film, But Alejandro Monteverdi said, you know, you were talking about that line earlier. I said, yeah, go ahead and use it. So I go in, I tell the actor, I said, we're shooting French overs. So we're shooting simultaneously. So you get his reaction. And I said, look, we got the scene. It's amazing. Just play along with me on this. Hang on 1 second. So I said, we get to the end of the scene. I said, better a millstone be hung around your neck that you be cast into the sea, that you should ever hurt one of these little ones. And his immediate reaction was, I don't know what you're talking about. And I laughed so hard. But anyway, the reaction from the audience, in this audience it was about 60%. 60% of the audience in this place, not on the adrenochrome, but this one, exploded. And the 40% were like, what was that line? What is it from? And they'd be like, it's from the Bible.
The words of Christ.
This is the worst evil that I've ever seen. And I'm going to tell you this. This screaming, I saw a movie called Eclipse of Reason. And in the womb, and then another one's called Silent Scream. In the womb, the baby is quiet. You can't hear the scream. But on the outside of the womb, you get to hear the screams. And that is when sound has feel. Let me explain. That is what absolutely thwarted me. And so in the film, I asked Eduardo, there's a scene in there. We don't show it, but there's a scene where this guy goes and rapes this girl. Now, we don't show that. We can't show that. But what we do is we come into my iris, and this wasn't planned. It just was God. Put the camera up to your eyeball, and you get to see certain things through my iris, and then you see my eye filling up with tears. And this is where Tim told me that he can't keep guys. They don't last very long. Tim never went into the adrenochrome with me. He went into the organ harvesting. Let me be very clear on that. But I don't understand that however it's done, you're murdering children. And right now in the state of California, they want to kill babies 27 days after they're born. Explain to me how that saves the mother's life.
We're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to be back. The film is The Sound of Freedom. It is a film that I think will change your life when you see it.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen. It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to a child 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
How long you been doing this?
12 years now.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
Timoteo, tú rescatas niños, ¿verdad? ¿Puedes ayudarme a encontrar a mi hermana?
Te lo prometo.
For Homeland Security, you know we can't go off rescuing Honduran kids in Colombia.
Which means she'll disappear for good. Imagine walking into her room right now, seeing an empty bed. What we do?
You quit your job, and you go and rescue those kids.
So at this moment, she could be a block down the road, or she could be at Moscow, Bangkok, L.A. She's a major operator.
It's all rebel territory. No one goes in. Not the army, not the police, not us.
What if this was your daughter?
There's a new Marine unit coming.
You're on your own. This job tears you to pieces. And this is my one chance to put those pieces back together.
When God tells you what to do,